I'm Kier from In Defense Of, a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready, because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1...
Welcome to Better Podcasting, a show where we talk about podcast tips, tools, and best practices to help you succeed with your podcast. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we podcast purely out of the love and fun of it. Podcasting is our hobby, and we recognize that it's yours too. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Hello and welcome to episode 30 of Better Podcasting. My name is Stephen John Drew, and with me today is the super terrific happy hour, Stargate Pioneer.
It's Friday night and we're at the bar. We're enjoying a cold brew on a warm summer afternoon. Yes, we're recording this Friday night and the long weekend in the United States called Memorial Day weekend. Cheers to everybody and thank you for your service to this country if you are a serviceman.
As usual, Canada does things super backwards, and our long weekend was this past weekend. So I am very, very depressed that you will be having a day off while I sit there and preview Better Podcasting before we post it on Tuesday.
Yes, I will be inundating you with messages, hangout messages on our private group and just saying, I'm not at work. And
I'm sure that the audience loves us talking about things that happened previous as well, because by the time you hear this, you know, hey, that's what happens when you record things live to geeks.live on Fridays and you post them on Tuesdays.
It doesn't matter. This is time delayed content. They can get this whenever they want, whether it's on Spreaker, whether it's on Facebook Live, whether it's on YouTube. We leave the live stuff up unless it's really, really bad. We would leave the live stuff up so you can see it before our finished product goes out, just because we know that you want your better podcasting when you want it, and you want it now, and we're going to give it to you.
Absolutely. And that you touched on a couple really key things. We did mention it. We are now doing Facebook Live. So if you do like us at facebook.com/betterpodcasting, when we go live, you'll see it pop up in your feed and you can watch us through that there. I do highly recommend that you do not click on the full screen, because I don't know why HD content on Facebook does not look very good for some reason through Facebook Live. I've played with a bunch of settings. I have no idea why. It's obviously an early version, so maybe that's why. But on your little timeline looks terrific in my opinion, so that's awesome. And then, yeah, if you go to youtube.com/GonnaGeek, you can subscribe to all of the Gonna Geek geekery, including Better Podcasting, which, as SP mentioned, we do leave the live recording on there. So if you're just itching to hear us right away, you can check that out there. It is a little lower quality, a little less polished, and a few more which I'm just going to say randomly right now, because I'll leave that in. Why not?
And if you happen to wear glasses, just take the glasses off. It'll look fine for you.
All right. So here's the situation. We are in the absolute finalist of final crunch hours here, or timeline, for our contest for the giveaway of the Logitech C920. It ends on May 31st, 2016. And if you would like to enter for this Logitech C920, you can email contest@betterpodcasting.com, and one lucky person will indeed win this wonderful, glorious camera, and you can take it home and do whatever you want to do with it. We don't want to know.
No, we don't, but we would prefer if you use it for some sort of podcasting or video casting or whatever you want to call it, webcasting. And this is pretty much this day and age in spring or summer of 2016. the Logitech C920 is basically as good as you're going to get for a podcasting USB webcam. Do not recommend the speakers or the microphone on it, but the camera itself, 1080, it's about as good as you're going to get because you have to push it out. I mean, if you're going live or whatever, maybe it's local recording and that's fine. But if you're going to push it out, you do not want to go 4K because we have enough trouble with our 1080 feeds as it is. So no, 4K is not great. And there really isn't a 4K USB webcam on the market for those reasons. So yeah, the Logitech C920 is it. Great camera. Both of us have multiple of them just for different looks, different uses and stuff like that. And guess what, Steven?
What?
We got some great feedback again. We have another contest entry.
Dum dum dum. All right, go ahead. You. I don't know why I dum that. I don't know. It sounds like I'm trying to be dramatic. Maybe it is.
So Liam Richardson got a hold of us and he said, "Hey guys, love the show and I've learned so much from it. This is my entry into the competition to win the C920. First off, I will say that if I win, I will use the cam to improve the setup of my podcast as I currently use an older Logitech cam, but the quality just isn't good enough and I just don't have the funds to upgrade right now." Yes, we understand that because everybody's a hobby podcaster that's probably listening to this. And guess what? You don't have a lot of funds. Even professionals have to limit their budget for this sort of thing. So he goes on to say, the C920 would allow me to really push the boat out, not just in terms of video quality, but also improve the overall look and feel of the podcast and give a more professional image. And in the process, hopefully attract more listeners, which is something we all want at better podcasts, or we all want to be at hobby or professional levels. So yeah, winning the C920 would really give me a much needed boost and inspire me to push on and keep going. He goes on to recount his first use of a webcam. And I actually, this is a really neat story.
I agree.
So he says, the first ever experience with a webcam was back in 2003. And no, he didn't do rat porn, but he goes on to say,
it was not rat porn. It was a rat webcam. Which the rat's name was Jade, so it was the Jade Cam. Okay, that sounds like rat porn. Go ahead, continue.
While I was traveling around the world, I took a Logitech, and I can't remember the exact model name, cam with me that looked like an eyeball that you put next to the monitor. This was how I stayed in touch with my family and friends back home and stopped my mother from worrying about me so much. It seems fitting that your competition 13 years later is to win a Logitech cam. It seems fitting that your competition 13 years later is to win a Logitech cam. And I think that's a very neat story. It's exactly the sort of use that you would hope to get out of a webcam. And we have lots of integrated cameras now in our mobile devices and our laptops and that sort of thing. So that's great. But this is probably a little bit better quality. So I'm glad that Liam is now entered into the contest, and the contest goes until the end of May 2016, and we will announce our winner on our very next show. So if you haven't gotten your entry in yet, go ahead and get your entry in, and there may or may not be a grace period because we don't record until next weekend. We'll see.
That is an interesting tease, and one that everybody should be encouraged to email right now to contest@betterpodcasting.com.
Right now.
Absolutely. And like we said, end of May, so May 31st, 2016. And if you are watching this in the year 2018, well, you have lost by 2 years.
But we're probably running another contest, so check into the latest contest at betterpodcasting.com.
No, we're poor. We're poor because our iPhones keep breaking. So there you go.
Speak for yourself, sir.
That's true. That's true. All right. So let's go ahead and just dive into the main topic that we've got going on today, which is part 2 of our microphone arc. This time we are talking choosing and using. I probably will actually put the G on there on the writing because that sounds super lame. So here we go. Yes, indeed. We are talking more terrific microphones. And there's a selection process, as we touched on last week. There's a variety of microphones available, and they all sound exactly the same, don't they, SP?
Yeah, they sound exactly the same. It doesn't matter what microphone you have. Just pick up the cheapest one that you can and just it'll work. No, it won't. What?
No.
Why won't it work? Come on. Come on. They're all the same, right? They all look the same. I mean, I got an Audio-Technica AT 2005 and a Sennheiser E935 back to back next to. They look almost the same.
That's true.
Do they not sound the same? I mean, the Audio-Technica ATR 2100, the Blue Encore 100. I mean, they might look a little bit different, but they kind of have the same, handheld thing, and they've got a cage on top, so they must all work the same, right?
Absolutely, which is why you should always ignore our advice where we specifically recommend the Audio-Technica ATR 2100, because why not? Just use whatever. No, it's not true. They do all, believe it or not, have their own unique sound and flavor. They're overall, if you're looking and comparing microphones in the same price point, yeah, you're probably looking at similar quality. However, they do sound a little bit different. Trust me, I have used all of these microphones behind me, and perhaps there might be even a little something coming the way to the YouTube channel where you can do a little blind sampling. We've teased on that for a very long time now on a variety of podcasts. I think it's been like a year we've been teasing on that, but it is coming. It is coming now that we're finally doing this microphone arc.
Can't wait to listen to that, and we'll just leave that for later. We'll announce it when it comes out, but there will be a microphone test.
Yes. So, like I said, every microphone has its own unique sound to it, and here is the tough part. You have your own unique sound to you, and the reality is what might sound really good for you might not sound good for me, or maybe for your podcast partner. So the unfortunate side of thing is when you are selecting a microphone, you are going to have to do a little bit of research and then just take a gamble and see how it sounds with you, because with me, I have to say, like, I really liked how I sounded on the Blue Encore 100 and the Audio-Technica ATR 2100/AT 2005. Those sounded really, really good to me, but some of the other ones I didn't think did sound as good. SP, on the other hand, he really, really, really preferred his Sennheiser E935 over the Blue Encore 100.
Yeah, I did. And this is an example of every voice is different. Steven's voice is different than my voice. Chris Farrell's voice is different than both of our voices. The ladies on the network, whether it's Lauren or Haley or Michelle, they all have different sounding voices, and different microphones might actually enhance their sound better than others. Now, before we get into this, we just need to qualify one more time. The ATR 2100 is a great mic, and that's really all you need to get started. But after you've been podcasting for a while, you just need to understand that if you're looking to upgrade, if you're looking to change, if you're looking to get maybe a little bit better enhanced sound just for you, like you're getting into the hobby and you want to learn more about it, and you want to make your voice sound a little bit better, there's no advantage to the podcast. The ATR 2100 will sound just fine and dandy. It's a great listenable sound, and that's really the key of what you're going for. But if you're going to go more advanced, if you want to sound a little bit better, if you want to make your editing maybe a little bit more easier, that's where you might want to explore different microphones. So if you do explore different microphones, which we have, for example, the Blue 100, it sounds great. I just don't like my voice on it. I prefer my voice on the Sennheiser E935. It's just the way that I do. If I'm going to go this class of microphone, I want to go just a little bit extra. Now, the E935 from Sennheiser is above the $100 mark.
Yes.
If I'm below the $100 mark, I will go with the AT 2005. So it's just
as on the video stream, he holds up the Sennheiser E935 by mistake, which I'm calling out for all the audio listeners.
I did, because they look almost the same, and I just glanced down really quick. But yeah, if I'm going sub 100, I will go with the AT 2005, which sounds the exact same as the ATR 2100. The only reason I like this better is I like the fit form better. The square cage on it better, which you don't see because I've got a foam on it. So it's all just vanity, really. But so, yeah, you have different choices, and there's not just these choices. There's many, many choices in the sub 100 range. There's many choices in the 200 range. So you just have to know go to a store, maybe check out your voice, maybe buy it from somewhere that you can return it from, and just check out how it sounds to you. And that is how to get a good voice on it. Now, there are differences in the microphones itself. There's technical differences in the microphone. One of the things that is different from microphone to microphone is the frequency range response of the microphone. Now, a normal human voice, a male voice goes down to maybe 120-ish hertz, and then a female voice will go up to 3,400 hertz or 3.4 kilohertz. And a male voice is just under that on the high end, and a female voice is just above the 120 hertz on the low end. So that's your scale basically for males or females, about 120 hertz on the low end on the deep baritone voice. It went up to 3.4 kilohertz on the top end. So
Incredible.
Exactly. I've been getting some workout on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I got to say Luke Cage and stuff like that for Lord. And science babies. But if you take a look at the microphone responses in the sub $100 range, they normally range from about 40 hertz to 80 hertz on the low end. And on the high end, they'll go to like 15,000 hertz to maybe 20,000 hertz on the high end. You're not going to need that range for your voice if you're only using it for a voice. Now, some musical instruments, that would be different. But if it's just your voice, any of these microphones will do. So it's really how it captures the sound and how it makes it sound, the warmness of it, how it captures different ranges, and some will enhance specific ranges more than others. So that's why we say the frequency response isn't just flat. It'll go up and down depending on how it's actually tuned. So that is why your voice will sound differently from microphone to microphone, is the technical aspects of the frequency response of the microphone.
Absolutely. But there's more than just that, though. The thing is, you can't just be like, I'm going to look and select my microphone based off of frequency response, because if it's got a bigger frequency response, it's got to be better. No, that is not true at all, because the frequency response is just an element of it. It's going to capture more of the picture, but every microphone might have its own little sort of, we'll call it an EQ, an internal equalization, where certain things might sound a little more prominent than the other. For example, with the Audio-Technica ATR 2100, to me, I've always thought that there's almost a bit of an artificial sound to it. Now, I mean that in a good way. I actually think when you compare it, it gives almost a sort of sound that you get from the DBX. There's just this undescribable sound that I noticed from people who use DBXs that comes through the processor. And there's almost this quality of it, in my opinion, with the ATR 2100 and the AT 2005. The other microphones, on the other hand, I personally think they sound more raw, but I'm also somebody who is very into equalization later, compressing later, things like that. And so every microphone has its own, like I said at the top, unique flavor. And so one microphone you might like better than the other depending on the sound you're looking to achieve. And I'll give you an example. The Shure SM58 is the staple microphone as far as musicians go, like on stage. You see a ton of musicians using it. I also regularly see podcasters recommend it. My first real microphone was that Shure SM58, and since then I've collected a bunch of other ones in my quest for sound, because it never jived with me. I never thought that it offered me everything that I wanted, and I actually thought that the ATR 2100 and other mics like the Blue 100 offered something better for me. So it's a great example, in my opinion, of a microphone that some people swear by, but it didn't really meet my expectations.
So in addition to the frequency response, in addition to the fit form, in addition to how your voice interacts with the microphone, you have to look at how you're actually hooking it up to whatever you're capturing the sound with. Because a microphone on its own, like the Sennheiser E935 is just said that because it was the closest one I picked it up. It does nothing if you don't connect it to anywhere, because that sound, it doesn't go out to a speaker. There's no speaker connected to it. It's not like your cell phone or a digital audio recorder that actually has a speaker in it that you can kind of hear or anything. This goes nowhere. So you actually have to hook it up somewhere, whether it's through USB with the ATR 2100 or the 2005, or it's through XLR into a mixer or an audio interface. And those will have different gain settings or preamp settings on them. Some of them will have digitation, whether it's through USB connection into your computer or wherever recording device you have, whether it goes through the aux send, whether it goes through the main out or whatever. It's just a different actual sound that could come out of the other end. So you have to look at the entire sound chain or audio chain into where your sound starts and where it ends. So it's not just the microphone, it's your entire setup. For example, both Stephen and I are using a digital processor. Now, you don't need one of these. We've covered this before, and we've covered how our microphones sound with and without it.
Yeah.
And it's both listenable. You can still podcast without one. It's no big deal. We just like our voices sound live, and that's why we use one. But that's an example of something that's been inserted into the chain that makes the microphone sound slightly differently. So you have all of that as well. And there's audio devices that go into the thousands and tens of thousands with the warm tubes in them and stuff like that for a processor. If you're a singer, you might be very well aware of those sorts of things, but they do cost a lot of money. And if you're just a hobby podcaster, you might not have that available to you. Again, go to the ATR 2100, fantastic listenable sound. You don't need highly advanced stuff. But if you're trying to combine signals, if you have multiple people in the same room, if you have multiple people throughout the internet and you're trying to multi-track through multiple different Skype sessions or multiple different machines, you're going to need some way to combine that sound to record it later or to put it out through a live stream or something like that. That's where a mixer or an audio interface comes together. And in order to connect to those, you need a microphone cable. So it's something called an XLR cable. And there's different qualities and different lengths. So, Stephen, you want to run down the differences in an XLR cable?
Absolutely. One of the biggest differences that you'll find is just general build quality, because people do hand build cables, whether they are XLR cables or TRS cables, the 1/4 inches. A lot of fussy musicians actually do build their own cables because they know that it's going to give them the sound that they want or whatever. So there are different build qualities. For me, I find that the biggest thing that's made a difference for me is keeping to shorter lengths of cables, as well as keeping to a higher gauge of cable, so a thicker cable. This is something that I've experimented with a variety of cables over the years, and one of the ones that I personally think offers the best value if you are using a microphone that requires an XLR cable is actually the Monoprice 16 AWG gauge cables. I think that those ones there are a great bang for the buck for a hobby podcaster. Yes, you will find a variety of people who say there are 100 other cables which are better than it, but I find looking in that sort of price point, it's done me solid. When I replaced the cable on this microphone with one of them, I actually heard a difference, a reduction in line noise, as well as just an increase in quality. So I have to say, I don't usually like to say product names or website names, but I just can't find a cable, in my opinion, that does beat that for the value and quality. How about you, SP?
Right. So I go with the Monoprice cables when I can, because they just seem to be a better quality for the price, as you said. And once again, these cables are not meant to last forever. There's actual components in there which channel the sound electronically along the line, and sometimes those crack and go bad. So you end up with line noise or signal loss. And the way these work, by the way, is they're 3-pronged, and you see on the video, you see it on the end of the ATR 2100. I actually have a 6-foot Monoprice 16 gauge AWG cable in my hand that I had purchased. And what you do is you just take the female end and you hook it into that male receptacle on the microphone. And it just doesn't have to be the ATR 2100. Most microphones have that male end on that. And you click the one end, and on the other end, it's either a 1/4 inch TS or TRS connection. I would recommend sticking with the with the actual XLR cable and then plug that into the channel, because that's a mic line and not a line noise. And we'll talk about that some other time, but try to stick with the XLR cables where you can, when you're going into your primary insert into your processor, your mixer, your audio interface, whatever. And if you're going USB, it doesn't really matter. Just use a good USB cable, make sure it's not cracked or bent too much, and that is getting strong signal from the microphone to the tablet, mobile device, or PC that you're using to record.
Absolutely. And just on the note of going from one adapter to another, whenever you're doing your wiring, try to stick with where you start if you can, because it's better than adapting to another connection later. Sometimes you have to. It's just the way it is. For example, the DBX, I know a lot of people, because it doesn't have an XLR, they have to convert to the XLR because of the system that they've got. So it just depends on what you've got, but try to keep it the same.
So another thing to consider with microphones, you see the microphones that are in front of both myself and Steven, if you're watching the video version of this podcast. If you're not, we've talked about them over the last few months quite a bit. So Steven's using a large dynamic cardioid microphone made by Audio-Technica, the BP40. I'm using a similar microphone made by Electro Voice, the RE320. They're similar in terms of the price point, and they both kind of work for our voices. I don't think my voice would work very well with the BP40, and I'm glad Steven had a chance to test it out. And I think his voice might work with the 320, but I think actually it works better with the BP40 based on and it's hard to tell because he hasn't had a chance to test it out, but that's just because we know what's going on with it. Well, why use a large dynamic microphone? Because we both went to the large dynamic microphone. First of all, are plosives. We didn't want to get up on the microphone and have our mouths right on it anymore to get the best audio quality and have those P's go poo, 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 poo. And we didn't want the proximity effect either, which basically means that your voice is expanded and it sounds maybe a little muffled, but it's definitely louder and more pronounced because it's being captured right close to that capture point on the point of the microphone. With the large dynamic microphones, they negate those, so you can maintain a good 2 to 4 inch distance from the microphone and not have those boom sounds that I just try to protect the microphone from. So hopefully you didn't hear it in the recording. But also, I sense a little bit more clarity, and maybe that's just because there's a bigger diaphragm back in there that can actually capture more of the voice without it's a technical term, signal to noise ratio, so you're not getting a lot of noise or room noise or whatever in there in addition to your voice. So it's more focusing on your voice than the entire sound capture around that. I will warn you that they're probably going to need more gain. So while a normal mixer or an audio interface could drive it, if you go to a preamp or a processor that has a preamp in there, you might get a little bit better result from it, especially if you're using like a Shure SM7B that requires a heck of a lot of gain to use it. And also they're more expensive. They're at least $100 more expensive than the high-end stick microphones. So I would say the stick microphones go from, I don't know, $50 to $200. You go above that $200 point and then you find yourself in the large dynamic range. So that is where the Shure SM7B is, the BP40 and the Electro Voice RE320 kind of start. And they go up from there, mind you, too. So they are more expensive. And I wanted to do this for easier editing. I was spending an awful lot of time going into the waveform and taking down those plosives, like the P's and the hard T's and the C's and the K's. I'm like, no. I need a way to get around that because I wanted to make the flow of production a little bit better. Do you need this? No, again, you don't. It just made my life a little bit easier. Also, we haven't really talked about it yet, but there's also the sibilance sound, and I wanted to get away from that, and I was hoping that going with a larger dynamic microphone took that away. It has, in conjunction with the processor, so I've really enjoyed that as well. It doesn't always work. Each voice is different. You might have a voice that resonates better with the microphone on those sibilances than somebody else, so it's just hard to tell. It's one of those things. You got to try a microphone out and see which one you actually like and which one works better for your voice. So, Stephen, do you want to cover the position again, or do you have something else to say?
Sure. No, absolutely. But before we go into that I just wanted to touch on something as well. Be careful when you do shop for a microphone, because a lot of places will not take microphones back. So just be cautious of that. I know in Canada it's huge. They do it for sanitary reasons. So, and I'm air quoting that because I've got a whole other things that we can talk about with that. But that is here, a lot of places do not take it back. So just be cautious of that. If you do buy a microphone, it might be yours whether or not you like it. Just don't want you going out buying a microphone. Be like, hey, I'll take it home because Better Podcasting said to. Oh, wait, I can't bring it back. So just be warned of that. Be warned of that.
It's also not to say that you can't buy a cheaper microphone used off of eBay or whatever, but you don't know how much it's been banged around, how much it's been dropped, how much actual surge has been thrown through it, if it requires phantom power or something like that. So, which some condensers do, and shotgun microphones and stuff like that. So, I've had bad examples with used gear. That doesn't mean that you will have them as well. So just be careful, buyer beware. But yes, once you buy a microphone, usually you'll have to live with it, unless I don't know if Amazon takes them back or not. I'll get back to you. I know Mike Phillips knows a lot about them too. So at MC Phillips on Twitter, you can ask him if the place will take it back or not.
Well, I know Amazon took back a defective one that I bought, which we won't talk about today.
We won't.
And the other thing that I just want to quickly run down here is that microphones that SP and I have used, just to recap, of course, are our number one pick, the Audio Technica ATR 2100/AT2005, your Blue Encore 100, the Shure SM58, the Sennheiser E835, and then SP's big brother of the Shure E835 is the E935, and that one there is, in my opinion, a higher caliber than the rest of those. Do you agree?
It is, and I bought it specifically for that reason. It's more of a super cardioid than a normal cardioid, which, as we talked about last time, actually channels more of the speaking area closer to the front, and it also has a more higher end capture of the diaphragm as well. So it is in the $200 class. I think $169 it usually goes for, but I will place that in the $200 class. So it was a class above, and I bought it for a lot of reasons. I wanted to make sure I got good sound and so on and so forth. If I had known about, and we've said this before, but if I had known about the ATR 2100 or the AT 2005, I would have started with this, and I wouldn't have had an issue later. I mean, I just like that microphone, except for when I got to the plosive. Then I would have been, okay, large diameter microphones, let's go with it. I
agree. I sometimes wonder to myself, what would have happened if I had that instead of the SM58? Would I have explored out? I don't know. I really like that mic, the AT25 2000. Wow, AT2005. There you go. There you go.
Yep, it's a great mic. So once you have these microphones, how should you use them?
Well, what you should do is start by talking directly into the barrel. No, that's not true. You should not talk directly into the barrel. What you want to do is actually take your microphone, and we're gonna ignore what SP and I are using a little bit here, because it's a little different when you have your stick microphone versus your large diameter. Wow, your large diameter. Your large diameter microphone that SP and I are using. And what you want to do is take the microphone, keep it relatively close to yourself, about 2 to 4 inches away, and try to put it on a bit of a 45-degree angle. That's going to make a huge difference, because if you are right on top of the microphone talking down the barrel, it is going to pick up your plosives. And we're talking about your P's popping and your S's hissing and all this other stuff if you do talk directly down the barrel. And if you do put it slightly off to the side, makes a world of difference. When you have your handheld microphone as well, I highly recommend you get one of those mic foams for over top of it, because you're going to have to put it close enough that you have a higher chance of those P's popping. If you take one of these smaller microphones and you place it a little bit away from your mouth, or quite a bit away from your mouth, it honestly, I can pick it up as a listener when people are doing that, because I can hear the thinness of their voice. It's not like a condenser where you can do that. A condenser, you can do that, and relatively, you get your room noise, you get this other stuff, but your voice is mostly there. That's not how a dynamic microphone is supposed to work. So if you take it and you put it back by your monitor, you lose a lot of the quality. So you do have to keep it close, and I do highly recommend you invest the $5 in one of those microphone foams. And I think SP agrees with that.
Yeah, I've got another one. The vaunted podcast breath. So when you breathe, folks, and I know when you're talking, it's kind of hard because especially if you're talking very rapidly and you have to take a breath and you have to do that, it's going to be in there, and it's just part of human speech. I mean, come on, guys. Everybody breathes. It's just part of it. But if you want to mitigate that, what you do is, especially if it's at a 45-degree angle, you go off another 45-degree angle and you breathe in and out pretty much away from the microphone. And that is one way to do it. Or just back up and not be so close or whatever. If somebody else is speaking, it's a pet peeve of a lot of people. Once you've edited this a lot and you've used some compression and whatever, it actually brings those breaths up because it brings the low sounds up. And then you have to go in afterwards and you have to mitigate them out. So it's kind of like the plosives that I was talking about before, or the hard consonants or whatever, where the proximity effect, it's hitting really hard. There's nothing you can do about it except for try to mitigate it when you're actually talking. So that's mic etiquette a little bit. Like if you cough or sneeze, don't cough and sneeze right into the microphone. Turn your head away and try to get as far away from that barrel of that microphone as you can. And if you have a mute button, use the mute button. But sometimes, like with the ATR 2100, when you switch that on and off, you actually hear that click sound too. So I don't know. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But as far as breathing goes, if you're not speaking, try to back away from the microphone and not breathe right into the microphone, because you're going to have to take that out later.
Absolutely. There's another thing that you want to consider with your using. So now you've got it appropriately away from your face. You've got it on a slight angle. You're using your mic foam. It could be a phone too. Why not? You got your mic foam there. And what do you want to do? You want to totally be Jerry Seinfeld, right? What's the deal? You can't see an audio listener, but I'm holding a microphone in front of me like comedians do. No. Try to invest in a mic stand if you can, because it's going to make a big difference for 2 reasons. Number one, it's going to keep your distance and basically position in a constant state. As you start to move, okay, yeah, you'll move a little bit away from it, but you're not sitting there and slowly dropping the mic, which will happen as you get lazy, or putting it right up and popping your peas and all that stuff there. So try to get a mic stand in it. It makes a world of difference, and you can get a variety of them. You can get some which are more extensive, like the Heil PL2T or the Rode PSA1. I think it's PSA1. Something like that. You can also get some cheaper ones, some $15 ones, and you can even get the little booms that come in from the side. Those things work terrific. But try to get yourself a mic stand, and further to that, invest in a shock mount. I don't have it in front of me. I can't believe I don't have it here, but there is one that On-Stage Stands make. It's called MY325. It doesn't look like your traditional shock mount. It actually looks more like a traditional mic clip, but the way that it's designed, there is a bit of basically shock how would you describe that? Shock absorbing? I don't know.
Yeah, that's all these shock mounts is isolating the metal stand or wherever you have it from the actual microphone itself. So you have some sort of device which is holding the microphone, and then you have rubber bands mostly, or sometimes springs or whatever, that are removing actual physical contact, metal physical contact from the holder to the microphone itself.
Vibration reduction. That's what I was trying to say. Vibration reduction.
Good vibrations. Beach Boys, go listen to it.
But yeah, no, it's really inexpensive. It's like $10, I think. At least in Canada, it's like $10. So probably like $3 down there, but it's really, really inexpensive product. And then you can go up to higher levels. If you look back at old Better Podcasting, you can see ones that SPs used, and it's more like a traditional shock mount. There is a variety of types out there, and I highly encourage you to get one, because it will make a big difference when you do bang your desk and prevent that from coming through on your mic stand into your mic.
Yeah, it is. Even the stick mics when I'm on the road, I have a very cheap, small MY325 shock mount that it's not great, but it's going to work a little bit. And anything you can do to mitigate those desk bumps or putting your drink down back on the desk or mouse clicks or hitting the keys or whatever, because if you're mobile, you're going to have your mic stand on the desk in front of you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to mitigate that somehow. And it's still better than hand holding that microphone, because you hold that microphone, you move it around. There's something about it. It just makes noise, whether it's the cord rubbing on something that translates the noise up or something. It's just not good, clean sound.
No, and you segued perfectly to my second point that I was going to say, because I did say 2 points. The second is the handling noise. And this is actually something that I wanted to wait till now to touch on. Every microphone has different handling noise. And I will say this, the Blue Encore 100 is actually designed more towards musicians. Beyond me, how they screwed up the handling noise on it. It is really loud compared to everybody else, especially when they're targeting musicians. Compared to the AT2005, you put it in your palm and you can hear your palm through the microphone, which is not a big deal for podcasters because you are going to put it in a stand. As far as I'm concerned, you should be using a stand. So in my opinion, handling noise, not that important. So the Blue Encore 100 has much higher handling noise than a lot of the other microphones, but they all do vary, and that is a huge advantage to having your microphone in a shock mount. In a stand, is handling noise does not matter.
Yeah, handling noise. Now, there are some reporters microphones like the Sennheiser MD46, which is designed with an internal, it's a long-stemmed vocal microphone. So it's just like the Sennheiser E935 actually, but it has a long stem. It's got a wider body, and the wider body is there because there's internal shock mount mechanisms and that will reduce handling noise and other noises in the area too. Not all of the reporter microphones work the same. They're called ENG for electric news gathering microphones. And there's Rode has one. It's called a reporter's microphone. And Baron, I forget how to say it, but Barrier, it's BEYER and then something else. That it has a reporter's microphone as well for ENG purposes. Those microphones are meant to mitigate handling noise as much as they can. There's still a little bit handling noise, but they're there. Most news gathering today actually takes place with wireless microphones. And the reason why we don't talk about the wireless microphones, whether it's a lav microphone or a handheld microphone, is one, there is some static that can, or line noise basically over the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or however it's connected, that can occur. Number one. Number two, the price is just astronomical compared to what you can get with a hobby podcaster's budget in the $100 to $300 range. So yeah, if you want to go out and interview people, if you're up on stage all the time and you want a microphone to hand around the audience or something like that, you're going to need a wireless microphone. They're expensive. Like some sets go in like the thousands of dollars, depending on how many channels you need, how many microphones you need, and then what the microphone is in and of itself. So that's why we're sticking closer to the $200 range and down when we talk about hobby podcaster microphones. And those also have handling reduction noise or internal shock mounts to them as well. Nothing's going to be perfect. You're not going to get the perfect shock mount. As Cody Gaw has, it's some sort of DARPA related headset that was shown on the GonnaGeek.com podcast a few weeks ago. Yeah, that really just doesn't exist, folks. He was using an actual microphone off camera and he was playing around like he was using the USB headset.
Yeah, the glorious thing about knowing somebody like SP, who is very passionate, when he finds a piece of gear that he likes, he is very passionate about said gear. And me, on the other hand, like me, when he hears a piece of gear that he does not like, he's very passionate about that gear. And we both agree we do not care much for chat headsets. That is an understatement of 2016 right there. And the chat headsets, SP was not on the episode of Gonna Geek, so Cody happened to have to use it for the headphones, so he put it down barely got his microphone off camera and just made SP for a brief moment think that he was using a magical chat headset that sounded amazing. So always fun to play with your co-hosts.
It is. That was, I actually, for a second, I thought, really? Wow, that sounds, because some chat headsets can have the appearance of sounding well, but in essence, their frequency response is really limited. So you get a truncated voice response off of them. And that's why we don't recommend chat headsets for a lot of different reasons. But we might have a surprise or two for you next episode. So stay tuned on that.
Absolutely. So to close out the second part of our arc here, I just want to remind you and reiterate that everybody sounds different. Every microphone sounds different. And in turn, how the two play together is going to sound different. So make sure that you do listen back to your recordings and listen for the cues. Does it sound a little bit like you're popping your P's? Okay, maybe you're somebody who projects a lot louder. I tend to do that. You might need to back off the microphone a bit more or double check your angle. Maybe you're somebody who is sounding a little bit far away. You might need to bring that microphone in a little bit. Just listen back to your recordings and make tweaks. And if you're popping your P's and you're hissing your S's, and you're not using a mic foam, that's your fault. Go get yourself a mic foam.
Yeah, just to double tap what Steven said right there. I shared a microphone with Chris, and I had no idea that man projects his voice as well as he did compared to me. I have to turn the gain up to like 100,000% or something. Like Chris is like a foot away from the microphone and he's still louder on the microphone than I am. So it's like, oh man. So if you ever have to share a microphone, by the way, make sure you share a microphone with somebody that shares your same at least voice quality as far as the gain or projection goes. But yeah, everybody's different. And that's a great example. Everybody is different. I had no idea Chris had that much projection to his voice. It was amazing.
That's awesome. Awesome.
So next time we have our final episode of microphones in our arc, right, Steven?
We do. And that there is going to be specialty microphones. Ooh, so what does that mean?
Stay tuned for some insights into specialty microphones.
All right, let's do the download now.
Welcome to this week's Better Podcasting Download.
This is actually kind of a follow-up to something that we talked about before. We talked about Blab and how Blab has been a little bit of a disappointment. I'll just say a disappointment to where we expected it to go. And guess what? In usual fashion, somebody says something on Gonna Geek, and all of a sudden, it is exposed to the world. It's just the way that it always seems to go. Anytime anybody on the Gonna Geek network says something, the world explodes.
Boom.
No, what I'm talking about here is a follow-up. Actually, last weekend, Blab, they ended up doing a bit of a informal press release, was it? I guess it was sort of an update, and we want to let you know because we've talked about this Blab service before, and we want to make sure you have the same information that we do. And they have just come out and said outright that the future of Blab is not going to be towards broadcasters or podcasters or whatever. It is geared more towards people just getting together in a room and talking some fun and just essentially hanging out. That's the way that they're looking at the future. So while we have talked about being optimistic for quality increases and things like that, if I'm Blab and I know that my future is more in people just hanging out and that's where I want my product to go, I'm probably not going to prioritize taking up more bandwidth and more resources and improving the quality. So I think that this is one of the, it's not the final nail yet, but it is a nail in the coffin for this to be used as a viable podcasting broadcast service. I think we're headed that direction, in my opinion.
Sure. So Blab said that they will not be dedicating development resources. I think the direct quote was doubling down on development on the actual Blab interface, that they have a new app out there that they have been experimenting with, and that's the direction that they want to go in. So they have stated that Blab is going to remain how it is today for now. It's static. It's basically past the beta stage, and whatever they have right now is going to be what it is. There are still quality issues. There are still scheduling issues. There's still issues with Blab, and it's just not going to get any better. So I would recommend that you explore other options to live stream your show and have an integrated chat. Now, whether that's through YouTube Live and on a live homepage on your website with a chat program like Chatwing, or whether that's through Facebook Live, whether that's through a combination of everything. I have seen some podcasters stream their YouTube Live or Hangouts on Air to Blab, which you can do, but you lose the interactivity there because you're not all there in the room together. It's basically just a broadcast for that specific time period, and then that's it. So the discoverability is not there. There's a lot of things that's not there. Now, with all that said, both Stephen and I have said, and to each other, that it is an incredible capability with a lot of possibilities. It's live chat, it's live broadcasting, and it's 4 different people that can be on the screen at the same time. You don't get that anywhere, that combination anywhere else. So if that sort of thing interests you, go ahead and use Blab, but just be aware it's a free service. You're not paying for it. There's no expectations that it's going to last longer than 30, 60, 90 days or something like that. They can start taking away functionality to that at any point in time. They might not give you your recording. They might not be able to record, and they might limit the number of people that's in the Blab to begin with. So you get up to a certain point and the Blab becomes unstable. So we're just giving you a heads up. Blab it's been a great ride. Yeah. So it's funny. I take a look at how long I've been on Blab. Say right now it's like 290 days. I forget the exact number. If I would go to Blab right now, I could actually bring up how long I've been on Blab. 290 days, so less than a year. Blab has risen and fallen for myself. And maybe it's been around for a little bit longer than that, maybe just a little bit longer than a year, but podcasters didn't really start coming to it in droves until like fall last year. So 250 days, give or take, that's it.
Yeah, and in my opinion, there's 2 key features that Blab offers over other services, and this might be something that actually works for you and in turn you want to keep using. Number 1 is that you are in a situation where it is near instant. If you go to Hangouts on Air, you go to Facebook Live, you go to YouTube Live, you go to any of these other things, the reality is there's a bit of a delay, and sometimes it's 15 seconds, sometimes it's 45 seconds, sometimes it's more. So Blab is near instant. That's huge. The second thing is the interaction, where you open up a seat and somebody can click, let me in. And as long as they've got a way to communicate through that Blab, you're good to go. So it is 2 big things that I really hope somebody else tries to do somewhere, because those are huge features, and in my opinion they're great features for broadcasters. So I would have liked to have seen them continue developing that a little bit, but I guess at this point here we're just gonna have to see the writing on the wall and hope somehow something changes, but know that it probably won't from what they're saying.
Right. And we've started to explore other options on the network with my shows that have been on Blab, with Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. and with Starling Tribune. And we'll use it when we have to, as long as we can, but that is not the future of my podcast. So at least not now. Maybe someday Blab will be fixed and we'll get back to it, but it's just not going to work right now.
Yeah, and this is a great opportunity for us to just tease on a little bit that we are going to talk more about Facebook Live, because we've now done 2 episodes of Better Podcasting, 1 episode of Gonna Geek, 2 episodes of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., and
an episode of Starling Tribune,
all on Facebook Live, and we're liking it. It's pretty good, like I said, quality-wise. Not as good as YouTube Live, so I purposely do downgrade the Facebook Live quality in conjunction of keeping the YouTube Live quality a little bit higher, because Facebook Live just can't give me that yet. So maybe that'll flip in the long run, but it is a great little tool that is fun to explore right now.
Yeah, it's been a fun little toy, and we'll just see how it progresses. I know that we'll talk about it later. Let's just leave it at that.
Sounds
because we have a lot more to say about it, and we're running out of our time for tonight because it is Friday night on a holiday weekend.
That's
for
true.
Us Americans.
Absolutely. And one more thing before we get to your feedback, I want to touch on one other thing as well. I did it. I took the plunge, the Windows 10 plunge this past weekend, or this past midweek, and I was very cautious about it because, as you know, I have a crazy array that allows me to do what you see on YouTube with this and Gonna Geek. I have a crazy complicated setup, and while reviews were good that everything should work hunky-dory, my last experience was that the video quality was very, very, very choppy to the point that I could not use it under Windows 10. Well, I upgraded, and it's been relatively successful. Somebody once told me that if I'm on Windows 8.1, I'll have no reason not to go to Windows 10. Well, I'll disagree with that slightly because I did have to fight with a couple of drivers and get a little bit creative that if I was not a techie guy, I would not have been able to get some fairly modern hardware working. I'm sure that this falls a little bit on the manufacturer. I'm talking about the Behringer UM2 that I've been using. It is something that it should be mostly plug and play. The way that it's set up, it should be mostly plug and play, and it was under 8.1. However, under Windows 10, it did not get detected, and I had to go hunting, and I found an archive driver of somebody who posted something on a message board, and it did work. It's actually a driver that used to be online but isn't anymore on the Behringer site. I'm not sure why, but it did work. So be cautious that there are still some things that you may have better experience with under one operating system or another. But I also was told that XSplit would not work. That's what I was told. I was told by somebody on Twitter that XSplit and other things like that won't work under Windows 10. This entire podcast has been done under Windows 10. This past week's Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. done under Windows 10. And I'm not seeing a difference here. I don't think that I am. And resource-wise, I think it's about the same as what I usually am at. So, yeah, pretty interesting.
It is, and I've heard from another podcaster or two that Behringer drivers were an issue, so that's something that's ongoing. I have not gone back and tried to upgrade my laptop that had a video driver issue. Hopefully that has been solved by now, so I might clone the drive and try that again. And when I get a chance, I might clone the drive here to this main rig and try it again. Now, I don't use XSplit, but I use OBS or Open Broadcast software to do the Facebook Live and to do some screen recordings and that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that that will also work with Windows 10. We'll just see, and then I'll have the clone drive to go back to if I have to revert back to Windows 7. Now, there should be an option to revert back, but I just don't trust it. So
yeah,
if you have a highly complex broadcast setup, I would recommend that you clone your drive to another drive before you start going through the Windows 10, just so you have a backup plan in case it works. Chris had a problem with it originally. Stephen had a problem with it originally. I had some problems with Windows 10 originally, and we're giving it a go again. July 29th, 2016 is supposed to be the last day of the free upgrade from Windows 7, Windows 8 to Windows 10. So time frame's getting a little short, and so go ahead, try it, but I would clone your drive before you do if you have a complex setup. If you have a pretty simple setup, you should be fine. But it's up to you if you want to take that chance.
Absolutely. All right, let's find out what you had to say. We did indeed get some better pod back this week. SP, what did we get?
We did. So Ben Reynolds at Bray9988 on Twitter, he had some questions because he was going to try his first podcast setup. And we went back and forth over a couple of days. Just a little reminder that we might not be able to get back to you like right then and there. So you're going to have to wait a little bit. So if you need like immediate tech response, we're not an emergency service. So just a little heads up there. As it turns out, Ben was fine. He had to wait a day and he said, your podcast has helped me a lot. Think about what I need to look at with the podcast, where to upload. So more strategic looking things. It's not just recording and throwing it out there. Although I do advocate, if you're jazzed up, ready to go ahead and record an episode and see how it sounds. But also just keeping in the back of your mind that might not be your final first episode that you go out with. You might want to record it again. So I just want to say thank you very much to Bray for reaching out to us. And thank you very much for listening to the podcast. We hope we are answering your questions. If not, go ahead and ask us a question. We'll either answer it in Twitter or Facebook or here on the podcast. Most likely we'll talk about it on the podcast because we like talking about this stuff anyway. So Ben, congratulations for recording your first episode. We really are looking forward to hearing how that turned out.
Absolutely. And if you ever do want to get in touch with us, you can find all of our information at betterpodcasting.com. Facebook.com/betterpodcasting is a terrific way to engage with us, or twitter.com/betterpod. Both of those are places that we check quite regularly. Well, I guess that does take us to closing time, doesn't it?
You can go home, but you can't stay here.
For sure. I do want to just remind everybody that if you are adventuring outside of the simple podcast setup and you're looking for a fantastic piece of audio gear or a fantastic piece of equipment to house your audio gear, there is a terrific company that we have actually seeked out ourselves. And I like to remind people that this is something that we approach them because SP used their product, and it's a very good product. It is called Audio Racks, which is spelled how?
AUDIORAX.com, or you can also find them at madeinfarmington.com. And basically, they make audio racks, they make sound stage, they make tables for podcasting and sound engineering and that sort of thing. But if you use the coupon code BETTERPOD10, you can get a 10% discount on anything. And really, they don't give out discounts. This is homemade stuff. It is a small business. It's handmade, crafted stuff, but it's really cool. I've had 2 of them so far. I had my original 2U one. I got my 4U one, which we saw on the podcast last week, by the way, when we did the mixer test and everything, or show how to do levels. And it's fantastic stuff. It's really quality made stuff. It's really meant to last a very long time. And it's specific to what kind of wood you want, what kind of color stain you want. And you can modify where the actual audio racks go. Say if you have a rearward facing element, you can mount it in the back if you have a rear mount on it as well. So it's just great stuff. Go search them out. AudioRacks.com. That's ARAX.com at the end. And you can also find them at Made in Farmington. Use the coupon code BETTERPOD10. I know a couple of you already have. We thank you very much for using that coupon code, because they were able to get back to us and say, hey, look, thank you very much for advertising our stuff, because we can tell with the coupon code. And thank you very much for getting the word out on our stuff, because like I said, very small company, they don't have a large advertising budget. But if you take a look at their Facebook page, which go ahead and take a look at that, there's some amazing stuff that they actually make, and it's really high quality stuff. So just go to the Audio Racks on Facebook and you'll see a lot of the stuff that they make.
Absolutely. So for episode 30 of Better Podcasting, I'm Stephen John Drew, same age as my podcast.
And I'm Stargate Pioneer, significantly older than the age of the podcast.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to another episode of Better Podcasting. We want to hear from you. You can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. If you like the show, please consider giving us a 5-star review in iTunes. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week.